I'm Kenshi, I'm a professional chef, and today I'm going to cook an incredible pork shoulder with techniques I've learned throughout my entire career. This pork shoulder, the particularity it's going to have is that it's going to be a pork shoulder that's going to cook for a long time, a moist cooking, it's going to shred, it's going to be super tender, and it's going to have an Asian flavor base. The pork shoulder is located between the neck and the back of the animal. It's a second quality cut, which means it has quite a bit of fat and connective tissue inside. What is important when choosing the pork? It's the coloration. It should be a light pink color. It shouldn't have any black or very intense colors. And it should have a good marbling and a good proportion between what is the fat and what is the meat. The ingredients I'm going to use are going to be slightly different from a classic braise, where we have a classic mirepoix. The mirepoix is usually composed of onion, carrot, celery, and leek. In this case, because I'm going to go for a more oriental style, I'm also going to use rosemary, a bit of red cabbage, I'm going to use ginger, and the sauces and the base of liquid flavors I'm going to use will be sesame oil, oyster sauce, and soy sauce. This will contribute significant umami color and the desired oriental flavor to the recipe. For about the response is 1.5 pounds of pork shoulder that I have here, I'm going to use 2 leek stocks. I'm not so worried about the type of cord I'm going to use. It's going to go in the oven and it's going to cook for a very long time. In some way it's not going to dissolve, but it's going to integrate with the pork shoulder. And the idea is that once the pork shoulder is cooked, I can shred it. That all this base of vegetables, this aromatic garnish as it's called, becomes part of the filling. If suddenly I want to use it to make a sandwich, to make a wrap, or whatever I want, but that it's not too small. I want it to be chewable, I want it to be felt. I have 2 small carrots or 1 big one. The carrot in the same way, don't worry so much about the size. Notice that the thickest part of the carrot I do cut in half, but the thinnest part I leave whole. On one hand, mirepoix in gastronomy is a type of cut. It's an irregular cut. Why is it irregular? It's typically used as a fragrant garnish. To make a broth, I'll prepare a mirepoix. I'm going to cut the vegetables irregularly because what I want is to extract the flavor of the vegetables in a liquid medium. As the vegetable won't be eaten, its size and shape are irrelevant to me. Simultaneously, the classic mirepoix in gastronomy typically consists of celery, onion, carrot, and leek. That's like a classic mirepoix. Being instructed to make a mirepoix in the kitchen refers not just to the cutting style, but also to the choice of vegetables. I remove the knot, cut it into thick slices, and then cut it again in the other direction. I have around the response is 5.29 ounces of red cabbage here. I'm not going to cook it in the pan, but I'm going to put it in the oven and let it cook with moisture. Why did I choose red cabbage? Because I want the final preparation to have a much darker, more mellow, more reddish color. So this way, I also make sure it goes that way. I'm going to cut it neither too thin nor too thick, because if I cut it too thin, it will disappear in the cooking because it's going to be a long cooking. Notice that what I always do when I'm cooking is first I do the mise en place. What is the mise en place? Mise en place in French means putting in place. First I make sure that the pork shoulder is well cut, the vegetables are well cut. I set up a board. The board is always adjusted below with a cloth with a wet paper. I have the knives at hand. I have a container to throw away the garbage, a container where I have the clean vegetables I'm going to use, another container where I put the already cut vegetables. That's what mise en place is about, getting ready and strategically placing everything in order to work in an organized, clean and neat way. I'll add plenty of garlic, using about 4 cloves. I believe it brings a lot of flavor. I won't peel them, creating what's known in Spanish as garlic in its skin, where the skin is intentionally left on. Leaving the skin on helps when you're going to put the garlic directly into a pan to cook. It protects the garlic bulb much more and prevents the garlic itself from burning directly, which once it burns gives a very strong and very bitter taste to the dishes. And having it whole also allows me that in the long cooking process, I'm going to be able to squeeze it, and it's going to become a super sweet puree with a garlic flavor, but not at all strong. And it's going to be part of everything that is the sauce and everything that is the final result of the preparation. Here I have about 15, or the response is 0.7 ounces of ginger. How to peel ginger? It's best done with a spoon due to its irregular shape, unlike a potato which can be easily peeled with a peeler minimizing waste. I take a spoon and what I do is peel it. And I am going to cut this into some coins, neither too thick nor too thin. I want it to serve much more flavor. Ginger along with garlic, this base of flavors, this combination of flavors, is one of the main ingredients or tastes of what is Asian cuisine. A cinnamon stick, which in this case, for every recipe I'm going to use, I'm not going to use a whole stick because it's very strong, very invasive. I'm going to use half. Here I have the cilantro, and what I like about cilantro is to use it at the end of the preparation raw. I'm going to cut it small. Rosemary, soy sauce, garlic, and ginger and rosemary are a very good base of flavors. Let's start cooking the pork shoulder. I have my broad list ready, including coriander and star anise, which I didn't mention earlier, and I'm going to braise. What's a braise? It's the process of first browning food, then immersing it in an aromatic base with liquid, like a mixture of soy sauce, oyster sauce, and water, before putting it in the oven. This implies the braise starts with the concentration cooking, where I'll brown the meat and vegetables, ensuring all flavors are concentrated in the product. Why is it called extraction? After browning everything, it goes on a plate, gets covered in liquid, in this case beer, and then baked in the oven. The particularity of braising, as I just mentioned, is that it is composed of concentration and extraction. I'm going to start with the pork shoulder in this case. The pork shoulder that I have, as I told you, is about, the response is 1.5 pounds that I have cut into irregular pieces. You could use the whole piece of pork shoulder if you want to brown the whole thing, or you could cut it into cubes. Braising is not characterized by the cut, but by the cooking method. I'm going to use a very small base of olive oil, and I'm going to start cooking what is the animal protein first, because I first want to brown the pork shoulder. Once I brown it, what happens there is the Maillard reaction. It's the caramelization of any product. All foods have sugar inside. In cooking, it is released, that sugar is activated, and that characteristic color is generated. That characteristic flavor, which is why we like it much more, for example, a fried potato than a boiled potato, or we like a golden meat much more than a boiled meat. When you are going to last a food, and especially a piece of meat that has a lot of water inside, a lot of juices inside, I put it and leave it still. I do not move it. You have to be patient now. What I am looking for here, remember, is concentration hot pan. I put the food, I leave it still. About 3 minutes have already passed. That depends, obviously, on the temperature of the pan. I've already turned it. And notice, I am just seeking to brown the food for flavor. I have golden pork bonduela, but it's still raw inside and hard. Not what I'm aiming for, I'm simply concentrating flavors. It's a key aspect to remember and forms the flavor base we're after. In the pan or pot, in this case, I have the Maillard reaction and caramelization. There are parts of golden bondiola left but not burned, which is crucial. And on this base, on this pan, I'm going to lower the heat. I'm going to put a small base of olive oil, which is going to be what is going to cook the vegetables. And sesame oil is an ingredient that I want to add flavor. I'm not going to use it as a fatty medium to cook because it's not going to be enough. I would have to put a lot of sesame oil, and it's very strong. If we use a lot, it's very, very invasive. I'm going to start with what is garlic and ginger. What I'm going to look for here is to lift all the aromas. If you already notice the garlic and ginger already, the golden color it has, it's not golden from cooking, but it has all the caramelization of what is the bondiola. That's what we're looking for. That's pure flavor. In those details, in those small details is the difference. I already have the garlic and ginger with coloration. I'm going to move it a second to the fire, and I'm going to do something that's also going to change. What is the base of aromas and flavors of this recipe? But you have to be very careful. I'm going to fry. I'm going to toast the spices. I'm going to add cinnamon. I'm going to add cloves. I'm going to add coriander. I have to be off the fire, constantly mixing. As soon as I start to perceive aromas to the spices, I add more vegetables. Because if it burns, it will ruin the preparation. I add the vegetable base. It still needs a bit of cooking. I want the caramelization much more, but I'm already going to add what is rosemary, and I'm going to add the part of the cilantro. Especially what is the stem of the cilantro, I'm going to add oyster sauce. I'm going to add approximately 4 tablespoons of oyster sauce and double the soy sauce. That's why so far I didn't add salt to the preparation. What I want to do is reduce it without burning it, but yes, reduce it. And once it reduces, that I have some super sweet vegetables integrated, I'm going to deglaze it with beer. What is deglazing? It's adding a liquid medium, usually it's alcohol, to a preparation to lift all the cooking bottom. What I want to do is recover everything that remains in the pot caramelized. That's deglazing. I'm going to reduce a part here. And then the other reduction is going to happen in the oven, on the plate. Now, I'm going to add the beer. A can of beer, half a liter, which I have here. For the response is 1.5 pounds of pork shoulder. The beer that I chose in this case, red beer, because I really like the bitterness and the slightly more aroma. It's aromatic quality. The beer is already 50% reduced, and I'll pour it onto a tray. This tray is heading into the oven. I'll add the raw cabbage, which initially appears too much, but it loses substantial volume, and the pork shoulder on top. This juice that I have left here from the pork shoulder, I'm going to add it. I don't want to put it at the very bottom, but let it be somewhat integrated into the liquid so it doesn't dry out on me. And I'm going to cover it with aluminum. The first stage of cooking will be covered with aluminum. I have the plate covered already. I'm going to put it in an oven at 180 degrees. In this case, since I have it portioned approximately 150, the response is 7 ounces, the pieces of pork shoulder. I estimate that with an hour and a half of cooking will be more than enough. But that's up to you. It's been about an hour and a half already, and now I uncover it. It's pretty well integrated already. Look, remember the amount of vegetables that were there? The cabbage was super abundant. In this case, it has already reduced a lot in size. What I'm going to do is locate the cinnamon. I'm going to remove it because it has already given all the aroma and flavor I wanted, and now I'm going to send it to cook without the aluminum so that a little more browning is generated. I take advantage and turn the pork shoulder so that it integrates and also gets moist. and just like that, I send it back to the oven. The cooking is already enough. The pork shoulder is super tender. Now what I want to generate is a bit of browning and make the preparation look even more appetizing. The pork shoulder is already browned. The liquid has been greatly reduced. The vegetables have also been reduced. Note, the garlic is thoroughly mashed. The pork shoulder is shredding with a fork.
You can serve this with mashed potatoes or rice without totally shredding it. However, I prefer when I'm actually shredding it entirely to blend with the juices and the vegetables in the cooking.
And suddenly you can make sandwiches, you can make fajitas. It works very well for all of that. Or a filling, it can be an empanada filling, a filling for some pie. I finished shredding. The response is 1.5 pounds of pork shoulder. Now I combine all that's in this preparation. But do be careful. For example, with the sprigs of rosemary, we discard them. And I had added a star anise, which I have here. We also discarded. Everything else is edible. I'll utilize the vegetables and cooking juice. I'm going to finish it with a bit of lime juice, fresh at the last moment, and a few leaves of cilantro. Well, let's try what the pork shoulder is like. The idea is to grab it with vegetables to be able to see the combination is great. I love the final finish with the lime. It rounds off all the flavors because it has a base. When you make it, you will realize it has a sweet base. The preparation was very tender. It manages to dissolve. If you wanted a more assembled piece of meat, use the same technique, but cook it less. Cook it 40 minutes less. And this for me is the best braised pork shoulder. Thank you.